Hi, I'm KK. I hope when you look back at your life, you realize how connected we all are with plants, fungi, and humans because you only go once.
All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm Cheryl Cantafio with my fantabulous co-host, Eileen Grimes. And we're here today on the You Only Go Once podcast, where we explore stories around the limited time we have on this earth to create a fully layered life, because you only go once. Eileen, we have a fantastic guest today, so please kick us off.
Thanks, Cheryl. I am so excited to nerd out a little bit today with our guest. Today we have KK on with us. KK is a plant biologist looking to bridge the gap between plants, fungi, and humans. She has a thirst for mycology, the study of fungi, which we'll dive into, and would love to educate the importance of plant and fungi interactions. Mushrooms and plants can and will help save the planet one hyphae at a time. If you like to get down and nerdy with plants, fungi, and other science facts, find their podcast, Flora and Funga. And I highly, highly recommend it. I was listening to a few more episodes and the one on cancer recently. Dive in, just dive right on in. So, KK, welcome.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
excited
I'm
about
honored
this.
to have this opportunity on here. So thank you.
KK and I were actually talking before we started recording, and I showed them that I got my mushroom earrings on. Also, Cheryl, I don't know if you can see these.
Those are pretty.
Yep. And then
Oh,
KK
nice. Do you have the same ones? Yes.
Decked out.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
I am
Nice.
all Amanita today.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
amazing.
I even
and
have
also
the
you
socks
should.
on.
Do you really?
I do. I just realized that. I didn't even plan that.
That's
It's my life.
That's amazing. So yeah, KK, tell our listeners a little bit about you. I have had the pleasure of also listening to your episode where you were interviewed, which was so interesting and fascinating for me. Share a little bit about, where did this interest come from? And, it started at a young age for you, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I always really liked plants. My mom kind of taught me gardening and how to get out in nature. So that was just kind of like the basics of it. I also every time went to greenhouses, I'd like collect those little succulent leaves that you find, or like I'd pick like all of these flowers. I'd actually get in trouble when I was younger by going over to my neighbor's house and like plucking their tulips. And my mom's like, come on, you have to go apologize. You can't just like pick people's flowers. So it was just like, but they're so pretty. Like, why couldn't I do that? And so that was just like one of those things. Climbing trees as well. It's just one of the ways that I relaxed and had my own alone time. And I knew I liked plants, but didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I entered Mankato with a like biochemistry idea, and I was like, that's not me at all. But one of the prereqs was plant biology, and I took that class and it all just made sense. Like everything just clicked for me. I love the professor. So shout out Dr. Rulin for that. Yeah, no, it all made sense. And I went for plant biology specifically after that. I also have had some relatives that lived in Phillips, Wisconsin, and I was driving around seeing amanitas, actually, this mushroom on the ground, and I had to go check it out. I was like, what is this thing? It was like huge, it was like orange, it was gorgeous. So I took some pictures with it and learned how much plants and fungi are all connected. So that was just kind of the one spark where I was like, whoa, I need to learn more about this. Like, why aren't people talking about this? So this was like 10 years ago or so. And yeah, so my mom supported me all the way. She got me Mycelium Running. So that's like the number one book that I would recommend by Paul Stamets. And yeah, that's kind of what led me into everything.
Awesome. And Paul's here up in the Pacific Northwest. So
yes,
he's on my list of people I want to eventually meet at some point in my life.
I know. I've been trying to like contact him. I know all of his friends, and he's like, oh, this is his email. Here's his phone number. Like, he's probably just so busy that he doesn't even keep track of his own phone.
Totally get it.
So yeah, and then the episode that you were talking about was with Howard Sprouse. So he's actually friends with Paul Stamets, and he was saying I interviewed him because he was a listener. And then he
Mm,
was like, hey, why don't I interview you? And then you could
Mm.
just have like a little blurb about how you got into this. And I was like, wow, really? Like, thank you. So
mm,
we're friends to this day. He invited me out to OP Fungi Fest. So I'm in the middle of
mm.
kind of putting that documentary together. So that was really cool. I'm
Oh,
now
that's
starting
exciting.
to get like invited to mushroom festivals and document stuff
Oh,
for them.
cool.
So
That's
Okay.
it's been
amazing.
a dream.
Yeah. And that was,
Yeah.
you went recently. Again, this is me watching
Yes, yes,
all,
October.
looking through all of your social
Mm.
media and everything like that. Yeah. So it was in October. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Incredible.
I know. Perfect time to visit the Pacific Northwest.
Oh,
Definitely for
Hmm.
that, especially. Um, yeah, so I just for listeners, I reached out to KK one because just the podcast in general was amazing. And I'm actually in the middle of a psychedelic practitioners program, a 1 year program, which is amazing and fascinating. And so really going through and understanding, our first module was really in diving into meeting the mushroom, right? And so having that background and understanding and educating ourselves from a cognitive lens, a embodied lens, a sacred lens, like all of these different pieces. And somehow I can't remember if it was one of the resources or if I stumbled somehow, but I found your podcast and I was like, I have to meet KK at some point and have you on the podcast. This podcast is so much fun because we talk to people and hear their stories about how they're living their lives on purpose and in the way that's fullest for them, and seeing
Hmm.
your passion and understanding what that looks like and how you get to live that out loud every day is just incredible. And being able to share that from a wonderful geeky lens of like I get to geek out with you on this because I love all my plants and fungi too. So it's so much fun for me to bring you into here. One of the things you were talking about too, for those listeners who might not necessarily have as much in-depth knowledge or understand, you were talking about the relation between plants and fungi, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, would love for you to share even a little bit more on sort of what that relationship looks like. I mean, during my program, like, oh, fungi aren't plants. Like, they're not even in the same
Kingdom.
they're not in the same kingdom, right? So like this is a
Hmm.
whole new piece for me to learn. So yeah, I would just love for you to kind of share some of that part to educate
Yeah.
our audience and let them
Yeah.
know why they're so cool and how they're all interrelated.
Yeah. Yeah. I really fell in love with the whole plants and fungi just because there's plants and fungi out there that can either heal you or kill you. And I thought that was
Hmm.
just very interesting how they can kind of do both in different concentrations. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And there's multiple different types of like connections. So there's like types of fungi that go inside of plants' roots and give nutrients that way. So they're kind of like intertwined. And then there's other ones that kind of are just connected and share nutrients in that way. There's also parasitic ones and mutualistic ones. Like there's multiple different types, and that's what's fascinating is how there's different, I guess, varieties of plants
Hmm.
and fungi connections.
Yeah, no, I think it's so interesting. And I mean, I was even one of the things that we were starting to learn about was like how at the beginning of life even, right? And
Hmm.
how much they required each other
Hmm.
basically to even evolve and grow and become all the life forms that we have now,
Hmm.
was that interconnection. And I just think it's
Yeah,
a really magical thing. We don't I you know, some people look at mushrooms and it's like, God, they're just like, get them out of my yard.
I
Right.
know. Yes, it is sad. A lot of people are afraid of even touching mushrooms, and so
Mhm.
I'm also trying to, I guess, get away from that stigma that you can't even learn about mushrooms. Like you can touch them. Fun fact, you can technically like nibble on them like any mushroom as well. You just can't swallow mushrooms. So
Mm.
Mm.
how mushrooms kind of affect your system is if it goes through specific organs. So that's kind of
Yeah.
like a party trick if you want to like nibble on some mushrooms and you're like, hey, but don't do
That's great.
it.
So yeah,
Right.
don't do that.
But
do
don't eat
that.
mushrooms.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how,
Mhm.
yeah, it only really affects you if it goes through a specific like liver and organs and things like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I kind of feel like 2023 has been the year of the mushroom because I've seen
Yes.
more and more people on social media that are active foragers,
Mhm.
especially around the I know nothing, so I'm just going to say words and hopefully these are
Perfect.
right.
We love words.
But the oyster mushroom seems to
Yep.
be big and popular, especially in the culinary world. I've seen social media chefs create um vegan alternatives to fried chicken using
Yes.
oyster mushrooms, which is
Hmm.
fascinating. And for somebody, I will freely admit, I can't eat mushrooms because I have a reaction.
So sad. I'm so sorry.
It is sad because every time I look at something, I'm like, oh, that looks really good. So I'm constantly fascinated by the way people are approaching foraging in general.
Hmm.
And just saying like huzzah for the mushroom as an alternate source of just food.
Hmm.
Because again, there's been there's always the talk about the reduction of the carbon footprint by eating less red meat and things like that, and people are focusing on
Hmm.
alternatives that not only are good for you but taste good.
Right.
So I'm excited to hear more around what you've discovered.
Yeah.
And then two more things, and then we'll get back to this. I do this. I go off. If you're looking for an interesting festival on mushrooms, I don't know if you've heard about Kennett Square,
Yes.
Pennsylvania.
Yep. I
Okay.
actually just released an episode today
Oh,
on
sweet.
fairy
Okay.
ring mushrooms. And so I
Okay.
actually interviewed the guy's mom,
Mm.
I think puts on that festival.
Okay.
So I was
Okay. Because
like,
that's
whoa,
huge. It's huge in this
yes.
area.
Yep.
Yep.
Mushroom capital of the
Yes.
world.
Mushroom
Well,
capital of the world.
maybe
Well,
the United States,
I
but
was going to say maybe the country, but
not the world.
but we'll give them what they need. Yeah. So it's just really interesting. And I also am interested in hearing more around. You had mentioned that we always look at mushrooms and plants in general
Hmm.
as like these things that float above the land.
Mm.
And
Mm-mm.
what you don't realize, what I've come to realize is that there's a whole communication system that goes on underneath, right? And
Absolutely.
there's, especially with, and again, I'm going to veer and then I'll come back and I promise, but especially they've noted with trees. So like if there's like a whole forest of trees,
Hmm.
and if one of the trees isn't thriving, they
Hmm.
all kind of get together underneath the ground and kind of supplement the nutrients that that tree needs to
Yes.
thrive. Is that the same way that it is with mushrooms too?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
actually both go hand in hand, like how we
Mhm.
bridge the gap between all of them. So
Yes.
there's specific mushrooms that are associated with specific trees. So they already have
Hmm.
their relationship. So
Hmm.
that's like morels or
Hmm.
mostly like the parasitic ones. So the hen of the
Yeah.
woods, the oyster, things like that.
Okay.
Kind of favor one specific tree just because they have like all of the things that they need.
Mm.
But then, you see a whole forest and all of that's also connected underneath. So yeah, there's different trees connecting, trying to shuttle nutrients to other things, and then those mushrooms are on top of that. And then don't even get me started on all the other microbes in the soil. So it's just like, um, let's see, what are some of those like different little um invertebrates or
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
insects
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
little worms,
Mhm.
and then microbes just in general, like there's endless amount of those. So having like the big biodiversity underneath the soil is really what drives all the
Mhm.
connections,
Mhm.
and yeah, thrives that way.
That's great.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you know this about Eileen and I, but we are women in STEM. So we've yep, and we actually co-founded a Women in IT organization when we worked together. And I always think back to when I was in school and I went from being really interested in science and math to not being interested in science and math, which
Mm.
is kind of a thing with girls in
Yeah,
particular, right?
sure.
What advice would you give to budding young women who
Mm.
are interested in STEM about your particular area of interest? So you talked about, like, obviously your mom gave you support, although not plucking tulips from neighbors' yards. Um, but what where would you say they could start learning more about biodiversity, fungi, all the things that you're interested in as well? How do they
Yeah.
get started, and how do they build community in that space?
Yeah. I guess I'm always like a forever learner.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have library books on hand. Like I have some books behind me. Literally the books that I have is like phosphorus and like the nature of plants. Like how
Mm-hmm.
do plants work? Like that's the stuff that I'm reading while going to
Mm-hmm.
sleep.
Okay.
Uh
Sure.
so yeah, finding your local library is probably my biggest advice is like look at all of the areas of like biology or whatever topics that you're interested in
Mm-hmm.
and or ask for help to try to find those topics because I learned so much from public libraries. You can rent them. Also, the internet is crazy now.
Yeah, a little
And
bit.
if you're, YouTube kind of covers so many different things, but I just loved learning so much, and that's why I wanted to go to school. You don't even have to get a degree to do what I'm doing or other mycologists.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like a easy way to have a schedule. But if you're really
Mm-hmm.
determined, then it's probably more beneficial to teach yourself. So that's a lot of mycologists right now,
Okay.
just because they don't really teach that. Like when I was at Mankato, I kind of made my own like emphasis with mycology because they
Terrific.
only offer like soil science. So it's kind of
Got it.
unfortunate that
Mm-hmm.
they only offer like thank God they offered plant classes. And so right now they're starting to, I think, get more of those professors in with the mycology field, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about that could be like my thing to bring back
Sure.
is trying to do a class on the connections of both plants and fungi. I think that would be really fun to be like a professor that way.
Oh, I think that would be great because
Yeah,
it has to start with somebody, right? So,
exactly.
right. I want to switch a little bit because prior to us starting our recording, you had mentioned, or you and Eileen had started mentioning some of the new, not research, but real, I guess, findings with mushrooms in relationship to cancer.
Mm,
Cancer is something that is cancer research is something very personal to me. I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer last year, and
mm,
I lost my mother-in-law to metastatic breast cancer back in 2012. And it's just curious to see, like, chemo almost seems worse than the disease. And I mean no disrespect, because doctors and scientists have come so far with chemotherapy and what it
right,
does. And it would also be interesting to see what from nature might be able to combat this awful insidious disease. So I was
right.
wondering if you had any insights around that.
Yeah, yeah, turkey tail is so I don't want to like butcher this, but my
Mm-hmm.
partner is the one that always like he's the chemist. So when we do
Gotcha.
Mm,
mushroom presentations,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, the botanist, like the
Mm-hmm.
biology, and he's all
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, we got this chemical, and then like it's got the trans like
Yeah.
formation that way,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, wow.
Right.
But turkey tail is one of the mushrooms that is well studied. It's actually prescribed in Europe
Ooh.
because it has a specific molecule in there that when
Mm-hmm.
you take it, it actually helps with the chemo. So it actually like is a synergistic effect and helps you go through chemo easier. It's
Mm.
also used for immune boosting. And yeah, so turkey tail would be, it's kind of like the number one thing that we talk about at farmers markets. And
Mm.
also Rishi is another very well studied mushroom from Eastern, like traditional medicine. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like an overall immune arthritis is what I take Rishi
Oh,
for as well. So
okay.
I actually was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis
Mm.
like 3 years ago. And so I
Okay.
actually learned all about this because somebody approached me to be on the podcast, but they
Hmm.
were like, "Hey, I'd love to do like a holistic approach of helping you heal." And so they
Mm.
went through, and Rishi was like the number one powder that they recommended that I take. So
Hmm.
I take a specific mushroom stack every day to help with different things.
Okay. Okay. That's
hmm
fascinating too
Yeah.
from the rheumatoid arthritis perspective too. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So I also, sorry, I'm just gonna jump in real quick
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
because
please
Jump in.
jump on in.
Jump
I
in.
take these at nighttime.
Okay.
Okay.
Chill
And
gummies.
so
Yeah.
yeah, but it's got the reishi and
Perfect.
Mhm.
like it's so fascinating because there's just so many and like I'm drinking some mushroom coffee right now.
Yes.
Mm.
Like not in
Mhm.
preparation for you. I've literally been doing this now
Yes.
for a while and
hmm
I've
Mhm.
found some benefits with a lot of
Mhm.
that and focus and clarity and a lot of things too with like a
Mhm.
daily mushroom, right?
Mhm.
hmm
And it's been kind of incredible having that
Mhm.
and but yeah, there's so many different things right now. I feel like a lot of this stuff is now starting to pop up. I was researching the other day on mushroom fabric, right?
Yep.
And
Mhm.
just how there's potential for using that. Obviously, there's still some work that needs to be done and making
Right.
sure that it's flexible enough and that you're able to move in it and things.
Right.
But like,
Walking like this.
right? um, but it's so fascinating. Like it's just fascinating seeing that world now being like, oh, and it's replenishable, right? It's easy to
Mhm.
grow
Mhm.
and all those things. And it's just fascinating seeing how much is accessible to be able to bring in terms of sustainability, right? But then also
Yes.
really the benefits that we get by actually taking those that are really supportive. So anyway,
hmm
sorry, I was interrupting. I got too
No, no,
excited.
you're okay.
Mhm.
I remember the molecule polysaccharide K is what's in turkey tail. So I just
Oh,
want to
okay.
make sure I say that
Yes.
specifically. I wanted to talk about lion's mane as well. So when
Oh,
we're
I've
at
heard
the
about
farmers
this one.
market, tons
Mhm.
of people. So I'm in the Villages, Florida, so 55 plus retirement community.
Okay.
And people come up to our stand. And about like 3 months ago, nobody really, knew the benefits of mushrooms.
Mhm.
And recently, people are coming up to our stand. They're like, "Hey, do you guys have lion's mane?" And we're like, "Yeah, we actually do. Like, what form do you want? We got tinctures, powder,
Yeah.
fresh, dried, like all of these different options for people." And I love how mushrooms are trending right now just because now
Mhm.
people are coming up to us and
Mm.
asking what mushrooms we have. And so, yeah, if you don't know what lion's mane it is, very like it's a white fuzzy mushroom and honestly it tastes it's like a pull apart string cheese or like crab meat
Hmm.
texture. So a lot of
Okay.
people are using it as like a crab meat substitution
Mm.
and so it's a very like vegan driven
Mhm.
product right now. So we
Mhm.
have a recipe that covers how to make lion's mane crab cakes. So
Mm.
you
Ooh.
replace crab with lion's
Mhm.
mane 1-to-1, and it's a
Mhm.
perfect recipe.
Mhm.
And then you can feed it to your vegan friends and impress them.
That's very
But
cool.
lion's mane is very good for like cognitive benefits. So
Oh.
reducing the like the risk of ADHD, dementia, Alzheimer's. So it's exactly the group of
Mm.
people that we're targeting for
Mhm.
our market. So it's just want to make sure that we talked about lion's mane at some point.
Yeah.
Very tasty mushroom.
It's very fluffy. It looks
Yes,
very
very
fluffy. I mean,
fluffy.
it looks fluffy. That's, I went and looked
Yes.
it up
Yeah.
because I couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Wow.
there's multiple types within the same family. So it's a Hericium species, and
Hmm.
there's like multiple of that in that family.
That is wild.
Yeah. Yeah, super
Oh my
cool.
See,
goodness.
Cheryl?
Yeah. See, I'm so fascinated now. Um, Yeah, I feel
Yes,
like
we
every
got
time
her.
you got me. I feel like every time I record one of these, I'm like, oh, and I go right down the rabbit hole and I'm gone. So if you see me like looking to the side, it's because I'm like, what is lion's mane? And I'll boop boop boop, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. Um, boop boop boop. So where's the most interesting place you've traveled to see mushrooms?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So for school, we
Hmm.
got to study abroad somewhere. So
Hmm.
I really always had this idea of visiting New Zealand. Like it's just one of those like
Mm,
mystical places where
yes.
you never can go. It's like a
Hmm.
12-hour flight to go
Right.
there or
Yes.
more.
Yes.
So it's already a journey to get there. But yeah, I found this what was it called? I'll circle back to
Hmm.
the company. But I was there studying abroad in New Zealand for a month. So 2 weeks you were there
Wow.
doing rehabilitation of plants. So you could technically pick if you wanted to build a school or like help children or like plant stuff. And I was like,
Hmm.
plant stuff.
Right.
So I'm one of those people where I
Hmm.
was we were on this island with no electricity, like you had to bring your own trash off of the island because there was no trash,
Hmm.
cans
Hmm.
anywhere.
Hmm.
And so we would bring all of our food for the 2 weeks, and we were with a big group of people, and we would plant native trees. We would go out and collect seeds and start to replant them and try to germinate them, and then
Hmm.
also tackle any invasive species that we were seeing. So that was a really fun 2 weeks of just getting our hands dirty and trying to get down and nerdy with some plants. So that was really
Hmm.
cool. And then the following 2 weeks, we got to actually adventure around. So we started at the southern island and then we ventured back up to Auckland. So
Okay.
that was a life-changing experience for me just because I felt like at that point I was just starting to get to know the plants in the US. And
Hmm.
so it was
Mm.
kind of fun when I left. I was like, wow, I feel like I know more plants in New Zealand than I do here,
Sure.
which now is the opposite.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was just a really fun experience. And I found that nobody really knew what mushrooms were. And New Zealand is just the perfect place for biodiversity because
Hmm.
you have all of these winds coming in from different angles from this island. So you're getting like different combinations from each area. And so it's kind of its own hodgepodge of different species. And it's not it doesn't have a lot of animal species on there just because it is so
Mm.
secluded. So
Hmm.
it's super diverse with plants and fungi. So it was just really fun on our bush walks, which bush means the native forest there. So
Hmm.
we'd call it like going on a nature walk in the forest, but
Yeah.
there the bush is like native.
Sure. Sure.
hmm
Sure. Sure. Sure.
so I was one of those people where I was in the beginning of, our hikes and I'd be like, "Hey, look at this mushroom." Or like people would be like, "Hey, KK, what is this mushroom? Come check it out." And so
That's
like I'd
awesome.
try to like take some pictures and at the end of the whole 4 weeks, people were actually really interested in mycology and I thought that was really cool and to have I could get also a credit, for studying
Hmm.
abroad. So all I'd
Hmm.
have to do was teach a class on something. And
Okay.
I wanted to teach a class on the importance of fungi. And so it was cool. We got to go out and I told people to collect all of these different types of mushrooms that they found. And then we kind of divided them into whatever family they were and
Okay.
how they grew.
How
So
fun.
yeah, I got people really interested. And I think that stuck with people along the way. So I just love teaching and educating
Hmm.
and impressing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then to have a podcast too to go with that,
Yeah,
right?
I
and now I have
Because
mean,
a
you get to
yeah.
do
podcast.
that.
Hmm.
So, wow, full circle.
So
Right.
awesome.
hmm
It is.
Life changing.
So do you have, I mean, obviously you've been to a few places now since then, right?
Mm.
And you've been able to go on some of these different trips and things. Do you have a dream place that you want to go visit, and learn more and see more?
Yeah. My goal overall, I think, is to retire to New Zealand. I think there's
Sure.
so much more to learn, and every time a family member or friend says they want to visit, I'm like, oh my God, can I come with? Like, I want to tour you around. Like, I feel like I did a
Yeah.
little bit of everything. But if I were to pick another place, probably Thailand. I would
Mm.
love
Okay.
to visit more of like the Asia area. I haven't
Hmm.
really been there at all, and I think that'd be I mean, it's super tropical, so I think that would be
Mm.
even the same diversity.
Yeah.
So I
Sure.
think that would be next on my
Sure.
list.
Interesting. So I'm curious, just sorry, it's just sparked as you were talking about New Zealand. So you said there's a limited amount or very, very few of animal species in there.
Hmm.
So I know one of the things that, or please educate me if I'm incorrect here. One of the things that helps or can help grow is like manure, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so with the not lack of that, but right, without the sort of added piece
Mm.
of that, what is that? What changes without that, and how does that sort of work then when you don't necessarily have that sort of input?
Yeah, no, New Zealand's actually known for like the most sheep or something like that. Like there's
Mm,
tons.
Ah, okay.
Like the rolling hills was something that was just like mind blowing when you drove by. It was just like
Mm.
hills on hills, and like all of these like cattle or livestock are just roaming free. And so that's
Mm.
a huge difference from here. But
sure.
they have animals, they just don't have like major predators. So there's a
I
lot of
see. Okay.
birds,
Hmm.
there's a lot of insects. I think we saw like iguanas and like specific reptiles.
Wow.
Okay.
But yeah, there's not like something that will kill off a lot of other animals, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
kind of have to make sure that if a cat is brought on, then you have to get it checked and goes to
Yeah.
through quarantine. So you can't really
Sure.
just bring, I think it takes like a month or two to get your pet even okayed to come into New Zealand because of that reason. But yeah,
Got
there's
it.
a lot of diversity of like insects, birds, and smaller animals. But yeah, there
Gotcha.
that would affect probably some of the land. But yeah, it was fun to see all the sheep. So there was a lot of livestock there.
Totally.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you decided to start a podcast. How
Yeah.
did that happen? What did that look like? Why, when, where,
Hmm.
and then what do you want to do with it going forward?
Yeah. Yeah, so it started, I guess during COVID. To be
Mm.
honest, I was working at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, so I was analyzing blood samples all day. Super
Mm.
exciting stuff.
Right.
Hmm.
Sure.
And I always we could listen to music and podcasts and things. So I started diving into learning about plants, learning about mushrooms,
Mm.
but I never could find a podcast that bridges both. Like there was a
Mm,
lot of house plant
Mm.
podcasts and then a lot of like mushroom podcasts. And I was like, well, they're all connected. Why isn't there a podcast like that? And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own. So that's kind of like where it started from. I just
Hmm.
wanted to be selfish and learn the specific questions that I had. And so I was like, I'll just make a podcast and then record it. And then
Hmm.
maybe this will help me get into, a master's or whatever. And just
mhm,
networking, I think, was the main draw to that, as well as
Okay.
I think everybody should practice public speaking. It was
mm,
something that
Agreed.
everybody, I think, dreads
Mm.
in
Mhm.
middle school, college, high school, all of that. So I think
Adulthood.
it's
Hmm.
something that now
Hmm.
with practice,
Yep.
it becomes more easy. So
Hmm.
that's kind of where that all started from. But yeah, I was working at Mayo and I honestly had so much downtime that I started up my whole podcast while at work.
That's great.
So yeah, that's I had the time.
yeah. Well,
Oh
and
my
what's so
goodness.
amazing, so I actually have both of my kids in Montessori. For me, and this was important for me growing up, I had two teachers who were my parents, and the love of learning and knowing how to learn was so incredibly important for me
Hmm.
growing up. And like that was instilled in my brain. And that's why like I have my kids in this Montessori approach. It's like, how do you how do you know how to learn, right?
Right.
And so, for you to create a podcast, it's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I didn't major in sound engineering. I didn't major in any of these things
Yeah.
yet. Here you
Yes.
are.
Hmm.
Yes. It's so many avenues. So I wanted to how I kind of started was I got really meta with it. I was
Mm.
listening to a podcast called How to Start a Podcast. And so
Ah.
that was done by Buzzsprout, which is the platform that I use to
Hmm.
do my stuff. So
Same.
I think
Same here.
y'all do too. Yep.
We do too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So they have a whole checklist on their website or something like that. And it was like literally just step by step. So every day I was like, I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to tackle that, make a website, make an icon. I don't know how to do any of these things. Like I was so not tech savvy. But one day I made a website and I did it. And I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to do this. So we were talking prior about editing, video editing. And so that's where I started with the audio editing. And I was like, okay, I have an app. I have that. I understand that. I got social media. Now I want to like increase it a little bit more, a little bit more. And so that's where the video editing started. And so that's been going really nice. And yeah, just kind of learning as you go, and don't pressure yourself to do everything at once, because you can't physically do everything at once. So why are we even worried about doing everything at once?
Right.
So I just kind of took it one step at a time. Also with like releasing and recording podcasts, like I don't want to, I guess, lock down. I have to release something every week because I don't have that time. So then I started with every other week, and now I'm to once a week. So I tried to just tackle what I knew I could do and then increase it when I was ready. So that's advice if you're trying to start your own podcast.
Yeah. And it's solid advice too.
Yes. Yeah.
I know when we were
starting,
starting, it is. I know when we started, Eileen and I definitely have different strengths. Like Eileen, again, she talks about ADHD, but it's more of her research prowess that she kind of goes, okay, well, we need to do this and da da da. And meanwhile, I was like, so I'm almost on board with the podcast. And meanwhile, she was like, I've got the headsets, I've got the microphone. Like, what are you waiting for? Like, we're doing this. This is a thing. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm joining.
Send me the link.
And we learned along, right. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'll show up. And then I learned too that like Eileen is not a fan of social media, like posting, doing that stuff. Whereas I love it. I'm a junkie. I'm like, okay, like I will, I'll be on there. I'll be happy to do that. So I think the both of us have found synergy in what our strengths are for doing that. But I love that there was a podcast about doing a podcast.
Yes.
Yep. And I had started years and years ago. I read a book on adventure. It wasn't called Adventures in Podcasting, but it was one of the first MTV VJs. And I wish I could remember his name, but he was really into podcasting and he gave solid advice as to how to do that, what equipment you should use and that kind of thing, because he got into it. And then it was like 15 years later, I was like, oh, podcasts, I think I should listen to these. And I started listening to them. I thought that would be a lovely thing. And then Eileen one day said, hey, we should do a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. She's like, so I've already got this and this and this. You need to update the website. And I was like, well, okay, I guess we're doing this. This is a thing. This is happening. And it's lovely, right? Because the amount of connections that you make, I mean, it's very, when I think about what you do with your exploration around biodiversity and, mycology. Did I say that right? Mycology.
Mycology.
Okay. It's almost very, it seems almost like a natural evolution for you to go to podcasting, because there's all this behind the scenes coming together, working with people, understanding what's going on and making those connections. So just, good. I feel like a pseudo mycologist now. Yes, so I'm feeling pretty good about life right now. Yes. That's good. Yes.
It's who you know, not what you know sometimes.
That's right. That's right. I'm just taking a really big leap on that bridge. So yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, it's very helpful when you have, two people and you kind of you get to work with each other's strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, I couldn't also have done this without my partner helping me. He actually helped purchase my first mics for me because I didn't have the money or the resources. So he was like, hey, I'm going to get this for you because I know you're really excited about it and I just want to support you. So
That's
he's
sweet.
been my number one first supporter of the podcast. And now he's I call him my technical advisor. So
Fantastic.
That's great.
When we go out for festivals, he's kind of the cameraman. Also the director of he kind of knows how things will look.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so yeah, it's been very helpful to have another person because I don't know how I could have like, all right, here we are, like
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
recording by myself and
Right.
directing and thinking of all of that. So
Right.
very helpful.
That's great. That's
Hmm.
great. We're getting close to our hour, and
I know.
Eileen has an infamous question, and I was hoping that Eileen would ask her infamous question of you, KK. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So as Cheryl kind of already shared, there's three words that she knows when they come out of my mouth, something, it is taking us down a whole new adventure.
mhm,
This is happening, right?
Mm.
And for us in the podcast, I knew that, we had talked about it. We'd actually talked about it for a while, to be fair, Cheryl,
mhm,
for me at
mhm,
least,
mhm,
about doing some kind of podcast for a while.
mhm,
And there got to be a point where I was like, I just feel like the intuitive part of me, it was like,
mhm,
this is actually going to be something that's going to exist in this world.
mhm,
I know that I'm willing and wanting to put the effort in to make it here. I want this
mhm,
to be something that exists and it feels right to do that. And
mhm.
I can't imagine having left my life behind without doing that. Right.
Right.
So this is happening are some
Mhm,
three magic words that Cheryl knows. There's
Yeah.
a whole new adventure. She's not always a part of them. Some of them for me,
mhm.
like I'm doing an aerial arts class tonight. And I was
Ooh,
just like, this is happening. I'm going to learn how to spin myself in the air on silks. Because why not?
Nice.
Right.
oh, why not?
Hell
Well, that's
yeah.
exciting. That sounds like
Right.
fun.
It's
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
way harder than you think. I've done
it
it
Oh.
is.
and I'm like, I lift heavy weight and
Mhm.
that's crazy. I was like sore for days.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whole different
Yep.
version of,
Sweet.
body weight, conditioning stuff. So,
Hmm.
anyway, we'll
Mhm,
see how that goes. As long as I don't face plant on the floor, that's all I'm really hoping for
mhm,
tonight. So
mhm,
anyway, with that being said though, with whether it's your podcast or travel experiences or things that, you're kind of wanting to bring into this world,
Hmm.
is there anything on your this is happening list that we can be excited for with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what Cheryl was saying or asking, and I totally forgot about mentioning, was the future of the podcast
mm,
and what my goals would be and what I am trying to manifest is doing a traveling type of podcast. So I
Mm.
bet
oh,
everybody
lovely.
knows what Dirty Jobs is, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
I want to do something called Nerdy Jobs. And
Oh,
so
sweet.
I
Okay.
would venture around and do the jobs of these different people with plants or fungi. So, like a conservationist or a lab technologist, or, vice versa. And I would want to do their job for a weekend or a week and just kind of see what it entails. Because I think a lot of the youth right now don't really know. Like, I didn't really know what I could do with a plant biology degree.
Mhm,
So it'd
Totally.
be really nice to show people like what the options are. And I think it's just such a broad topic. Like I was interviewing somebody yesterday on like how broad mycology is. You can go with like the medicinal, the psychedelic realm, the
mhm,
culinary realm, the research realm. It's like endless taxonomy and just
Mm.
endless learning with mushrooms and most of the stuff we don't even know yet. So I
Totally.
think it's
That's
really
exciting. Mhm.
interesting to educate the youth on what their options would be surrounding nerdy jobs, plants and fungi. So I think that would be my main next thing that I want to do is travel more and
Okay.
do something like that. Yeah.
I love that. That is going to be,
Yes.
that's exciting. Yeah.
Yes. I'm
And let us
manifesting it
know
right
because,
now.
yeah, manifest it
Mhm.
and we'll,
Mhm.
we'll definitely, we'll need to have you back
Yes,
and kind of
absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
yes, and hear more about that because that would be fantastic. I'm really
Right?
Mhm.
excited for it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. TV show, book. I'm available.
All right.
Yeah,
Put it out there.
totally.
Yes.
Put it
Yes.
out there. Absolutely.
Um, yeah, and if you ever this is another part
Nope.
of my
Keep
problem.
going. It's not a
If
problem.
you
No.
ever happen to do or want to do retreats where you're taking people to do stuff like that, where you get to go. I know it was actually funny. I need to go get the Mason Goes Mushrooming book that I
Yes.
saw when you, yeah, there's a kid's book, Cheryl. I'm going to get it
Okay.
for you to put in your library.
Oh, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, so even to go, like, I would pay to go on a retreat with you to like show me around and educate. Like that could be a really cool
Yeah.
thing
Mhm.
also, right? As a
Mhm.
piece of
Mhm.
that. But yes, I love that idea, and I would love for my
Mhm.
kids to see that. And I could see it being so many different things. I'm like, oh, PBS time.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Like,
So educational. It
Mhm.
could be on so many
totally.
different channels.
Right.
I think it'd be
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Okay, we're putting
Well,
that out there for you.
yes, we're
Thank
putting it
you.
out there for you. And if you happen to take nerdy jobs to New Zealand, please give a snuggle to the Velay black-nosed sheep, because
Yes.
they are the
Okay.
cutest teddy bear looking sheep ever. I
Need to
love
look this
them.
up.
Oh yeah, they are so stinking adorable. They look like they're just so cute. So yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, she's gonna go see the Velay black nose sheep. Very exciting. Um, well, okay, so let's make sure that people know how to get to you and to your podcast. So share some of your social media handles with us,
Yeah.
please. Yes.
Yeah. I
How do
am
people
on.
get connected?
What social media platform am I not on? That's probably where I could start.
Mhm.
But yeah, at Flora Funga Podcast, FLORAFUNGA podcast, PODCAST. So that is like my handle for all things, I'm pretty sure,
Okay.
from
Okay.
YouTube, TikTok, even. That's a new thing that I'm on, TikTok, Instagram.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm even on Twitter or X. I don't know how X even makes sense. Like, who even says,
I
yeah, I'm
don't
on
know.
X? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
No.
But
Right.
yeah, so, and then I also have a website that you can venture to, www.florafungapodcast.com. So that's where you
Wonderful.
can actually look at my merch.
Which is
And
so good. It's so
Is
good.
it?
I'm not
I,
Okay.
getting that.
All
Well,
right.
she's
I,
wearing one right now. Do you see
Yes,
this?
it's very
Yes,
cute.
this is my
Mm-hmm.
OG one. I actually
Mhm.
just don't feel bad about reaching out for help. Also, that's another advice about podcasts.
Mhm.
Like my little icon, I paid somebody on Fiverr to do, and
Yep.
recently I just
Mhm.
paid 3 or 4 people to actually do more merch ideas. So that is also coming soon.
Oh, sweet.
Manifesting that in 2024. I've got like
Good.
3 or 4 ideas already lined up. So,
Fantastic.
but yeah,
Love it. Love it.
yeah,
Love it.
listen and watch wherever you can find your podcasts.
Awesome. Very good.
Mhm.
KK, what a pleasure to talk
Yeah,
with you about this world that you've opened my eyes to, certainly.
thank
And I know
you.
that I feel like now I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of catch up with you and Eileen on this.
Just get
But
down and nerdy.
yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right. I'm going to go get down and nerdy. Exactly. So, on behalf of my co host, Eileen Grimes, and I, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this installment of You Only Go Once. And KK, it was an absolute pleasure. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye.
See ya. Peaches.